Hey everybody, welcome back to the Vince Salerno podcast. This is episode 95. As always, I'm your host, Vince Salerno, and today is the release of a very special episode because I have a very special guest, my friend Grace Bydalek. Grace and I first met in Omaha, Nebraska. We're both on the set of the 2014 production of Next to Normal at the Omaha Community Playhouse. We have not kept in touch, unfortunately, since then, but she's been up to quite a bit. Since we last saw each other, Grace is a class of 2018 graduate at the University of Michigan. She is a highly accomplished journalist. She's had her work featured in the National Review, the Daily Wire, and The Conservator, among other publications. She's an accomplished actress. She's had quite a few credits since graduating. And currently, she serves as the director of the Dissident Project, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating high school students on authoritarianism and the various forms it takes, especially in foreign countries. Now, the way I reconnected with Grace, we get into it a little bit in the episode, so I won't spoil it too much. But basically, I found one of her articles in The Conservator and was shocked I recognized her name. I was like, is that the same Grace I know? And sure enough, it was. I was actually shocked to find out that she was not just Christian, but conservative as well. And I knew I wanted to reconnect with her and get her back on the show. And this is probably one of my favorite episodes to record because Grace was just so open to explore different avenues of her journey, in her faith, in her politics, and we ended up talking about a lot of things that we don't typically talk about on this show. Like I even got a little personal myself with my journey. She very generously asked me some questions, which doesn't often happen on the show. Not that it's expected, but just her openness to have a conversation about these things and the fact that we agreed on so much. It was really great to see, and I've admired Grace for a long time. She's a really talented actress. I've had the pleasure of seeing her act up close when we were working together on Next to Normal, and just a very learned individual as well. So it was a real honor to have her on the show, to get reacquainted with her, since we haven't talked to each other in so long. And she will be back. We wanted to talk about a lot of things, and because the conversation very wonderfully went in so many different directions, we didn't get to talk about everything we wanted to. So she'll be back for part two at a later date. But I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I certainly did. Please check out Grace's writing and her work with the Dissident Project after this episode. And without further ado, here is my interview with Grace Bydalek. Grace Bydalek, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Vince. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yes, it has.
For those who are tuning in and don't know who you are, can you just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Grace Bydalek. I am the director of the Dissident Project, which is a nonprofit speakers bureau. We work with young people who have escaped authoritarian governments, and we find them speaking opportunities in American high schools. So this would be young people from places like Eritrea, North Korea, Hong Kong, Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, a whole broad swath of different authoritarian locations. In addition to that, I am a visiting fellow with the Independent Women's Forum, and I am a Redeemer ministry apprentice at Redeemer downtown here in New York City. It was Tim Keller's church, and it's an honor to serve there. And I'm a writer. I write for various different publications, and yeah, that's what I'm doing. And Vince and I met all the way back in Omaha, Nebraska, on the set of Next to Normal at the Omaha Community Playhouse. So this
Yes.
is a real honor to be here.
Yes. Well, the honor is all mine. You are quite the accomplished individual. You've been up to quite a bit since we last saw each other.
I do. I do.
Yeah. Yeah, on Omaha and Next to Normal and all that. Now when you were at OCP, like was that your first show, Next to Normal, or had you done other stuff before then?
No, I had done other stuff before then. I started with A Christmas Carol. Did you see
Oh,
the
you were in A
OCP?
Christmas Carol.
I was fan.
Oh,
And
you were a
then
fan.
yeah, I was fan for a couple years actually, and I was in the show for a couple years. There was something about I think it was then that I really was bit by the theater bug, like when the curtain rose on the first day, and being involved in the rehearsal process and creating something, putting your fingerprints on um, the show and working with other actors and then like using the little props even that they would give you, like the little baskets full of candies and presents or whatever.
Mhm.
And then I was in Madeline's Christmas over at the Rose, and did a bunch of stuff as a kid, Wizard of Oz and whatnot, all the classics, and
Yeah.
then came back to OCP for my final show of high school, which was actually Next to Normal.
Nice. Wow, I did not know that you were involved in Christmas Carol. I also
Yeah,
was in Christmas Carol. I didn't act. I was uh, I was a spotlight operator.
really.
Yeah, for I think like 3 years in a row.
Do you remember what years?
Well, it was definitely the year we did Next to Normal because
Okay.
that was what, 2014, right?
Yeah, I think it was. I think
Oh
it
my
was
gosh, I
2014.
feel old.
I know, so do I. At that
That
time,
was
I would have been focused
10
on
years ago.
yeah, I would have been focused on high school speech at that time. I was like a forensics speech and debate kid, all
Gotcha.
in. Yeah.
Nice.
Because our school was just, speech and debate sort of was athletics. Like we had a C2, you know, football
Mhm.
team, and like we really didn't do athletics. We were the nerds who were great at debate and like had just a killin' robotics club and chess club, and like we were those kids. So
Rise of the Nerds, I love it.
yeah, it was great. It was
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because I was me and my older sister, we were there for a apprenticeship program. I was actually in high school, and for some weird reason, they allowed me to go to get my associate's degree, even though I was still in high school. I still had classes, I still had homework, and then I'd go to OCP for 3 4 hours in a day,
wow.
and somehow I pulled that off. And I can't really tell you how,
Yeah.
but
I didn't realize that you were so involved over there.
yeah. Well, I mean, I was like I told you before, I was a pretty timid guy back in the day, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it all God puts experiences in our lives, and whether we know it in the moment or not, they all become beneficial at some point, and hence our connection all these years later.
Yeah. Can I ask you what the
Mhm.
moment where talking about sort of God moments, the moment where your timidity, or at least series of moments of where your timidity sort of, um, I don't know, dissipated because
Mhm.
you know, you have sort of overcome that to a great degree. So what was that progression like?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. No one's ever asked me that before. I feel like it was, I think it was in college,
Mm,
and I think the reason why college specifically was because, like, I think growing up, I was a very, I don't say this to be boastful or anything, but I was pretty, like, set in my faith.
mm,
Like, I knew I believed in God. I knew I believed in the Catholic Church, and I didn't wanna
mm,
stray from that. And I think that's why I lost a lot of friendships along the way, because some friends just didn't think it was cool for someone
Mm.
at my age to be so into their faith and into standing up for things, I guess, that most kids my age didn't care about. And when I went to college,
Mm.
I went to a Catholic film school, and so the faith thing wasn't a problem, and we were all film nerds. So it was just it was like being at like a film camp for
Mm.
4 years, and just like we all got to collaborate and write, direct, make movies. And I guess I had this like moment like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'm not a weirdo. Like I'm not like sometimes I'd feel like the odd duckling, but I like, okay, I'm not, there are other people like me out there who are just as artistic." And I guess I was a little afraid to like express myself artistically because I didn't think
Mm.
people would care. And then I've had a lot of friends who I was surrounded with like, oh, people do care. So I guess yeah, college helped me to secure me in like where I was going as a filmmaker, as an artist. And like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, this is cool. Like this is all right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I was watching, it was 2020, the beginning of 2023, and I had just been through a couple like breakup and a couple other um big life events where there were sort of forks in the road, and I had to really um draw a line in the sand and decide what it was that was important to
Mm.
me. And I was watching Barry Weiss interview Jay Bhattacharya,
Oh, good one.
who, yeah, awesome. Awesome interview. Obviously one of the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, you know, he, in a very real way, sacrificed his career um, for the noble thing, right? To do the noble thing. And she was asking him, you know, I'm writing this book about what makes people brave, like what gives people genuine courage. And he was like, well, I'm a believer, you know. I I don't do these things for recognition or fame. And if I know, you know, that I've helped just one person or pointed just one person toward Christ, it will all have been worth it.
Mm.
Um, and I think, yeah, faith has, people will call it courage, but faith just makes your choices, um, makes your decisions, makes your path so clear that it's, you know, it's hard to be, um, it's hard to be untrue. It's hard to be untrue to
Yeah.
hard not to be true to yourself, when you're following that conviction.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's really good. I feel like yeah, when it's easy when you're in like a when you're in the habit of like a sinful lifestyle, not even like a sinful lifestyle, or just an ungodly lifestyle. I feel like it's very easy to think that um it's very hard for when God comes in and it's like, hey, we're not doing the work we need to do. We need to get rolling. You're like, no, 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 I'm comfortable, I'm happy, I'm I'm fine. I don't want to sacrifice my comfort for the sake of
Mhm.
whatever you have planned for me.
Yeah,
And it turns out whatever God has planned for us is
it's
actually
so much better.
astronomically better than what we could ever imagine.
So much
And
better.
yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes that does mean, as you know a little bit about, like sacrificing things that you want, or just
Mhm.
like willingly accepting pain in your life, whether that's physical or emotional, mental pain. But sometimes that's what you need to come to the other side and see like, oh, like
Mhm.
this is what I'm meant to do. This is who I'm meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you get to the other, I mean, this I this was just reinforced by meeting my fiance. You know, when you get to the other side, um, of the difficult decisions and the frustration and the impatience and the, you know, whatever, and you see, like you said, you see what God has laid out for you.
Mhm.
It grows your faith. It's an enlarging
Oh,
experience,
absolutely.
and it and you feel kind of stupid. You're like, you're like, oh no, this is what you had. Of course, this is what you had for me. And of course it's better. Of course
Right.
it's better. And, on the other side of that, just on the other side of God's grace, what I've been thinking a lot about is, how is it that we can live lives of integrity where we can be proud of the ways that we've conducted ourselves in the liminal spaces, in the space
Mhm.
before we see the blessing come to fruition. So I don't know. It's yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Sure. Yeah. So I feel like we both have a bit of experience just coming into like OCP and the entertainment entertainment sphere, the art sphere. It's not necessarily a friendly place for Christians. Um, did you ever feel any like resistance to living that lifestyle out loud? Did you ever feel like you um, couldn't or even shouldn't live that lifestyle out loud when you were like even like when you were starting theater or at OCP specifically or in general?
So I will tell you, full transparency, I would say I really came to Christ in 2019. So OCP, I grew up in a really thoughtful Christian home with two very thoughtful Christian parents who did their absolute best to shepherd us, and to point us toward Christ. I think I was just naturally a skeptic, right? Like, was somebody who was sort of constantly and pridefully over intellectualizing. Um,
Mm.
not even in a, like, not because I was intelligent, but because I was stubborn, just
Mm.
obstinate. Um,
What
and
was it like a matter of like, oh, I can't understand this, or I refuse to understand this?
a matter of intellectually, I don't understand this. I'm not willing to come to terms with the fact that I do believe this, because it's like the C.S. Lewis quote, like, I felt God, what does he say? Hunting down my heart like a pack of dogs, or something along those
Yeah,
lines. Just
yeah,
like you feel the presence of God sort of pressing in. And on a heart level, I did believe. On a head level, I think it was the barrier. Like, I had a wall up.
sure.
Um, and so really, high school, college, I would say I was not living like a Christian. Um, I was drawn to those who were. One of my best friends, from Michigan, one of my only friends actually still from Michigan, one of my friends who's at my wedding, she's wonderful. She's a huge part of my life now. Um, was living as a Christian at Michigan. Um, and I saw her operate differently and with much more groundedness and self-respect than those around her. And, you know, knew it was because of her faith. Um, but I was fully in the musical theater, secular arts world, and was really making no sacrifices, um, to live a Christian life whatsoever. And
Mm.
then in 2019, actually, the same friend, her name's Emily. Um, I graduated college, and we can go back and talk about college too. But I had graduated college, and I had a pretty traumatic vocal injury when I was graduating college. It was really bad last semester. And I remember she, on a whim, called me up. We didn't really know each other all that well. Called me up and said, "Hey, there's this lecture happening down your street. You should come with me and just, like, come see what it's all about." And it ended up being Questioning Christianity, the lecture series uh, that Tim Keller was giving, where he was
Mm.
really taking Christianity and pitting it intellectually against all of these other faith traditions, and even against atheism and agnosticism, which are faith traditions, frankly. They're belief systems. Um,
Mhm.
and I went back and back and back and back, and I felt my heart begin to change. And she saw this, and she was like, "Hey, there's this potluck." This is actually a funny story. She was like, "There's this potluck that happens every Friday, with a bunch of friends, and you should come. It's, this week is, I can't remember what she called it, something like Cultural Inheritance Week or something. And she was like, yeah, we're bringing food and drink that corresponds with our, our mother countries. So bring something that's, Irish or Polish or something. It's like, okay, I will. And, not knowing what it was, I picked up a fifth of Jameson and I, walked over and I was like, hey, everyone. And it's, of course, a Bible study. And it's like
The
a
day that you
community.
went to a Bible study.
Yeah, it's a community group. And I walked in, and those people became my closest, fastest friends in the city. And one of those wonderful women is also a bridesmaid at my wedding, which is just lovely. And then from there, it was plugged in with Redeemer Downtown, and my life just changed. Everything came into color. And that is when I would say that I really accepted Christ, because I found what Christian community, I found that I understood on a deeper level what Christian community really was, and had been accepted by this group of people with this sort of openness and unconditionality that I'd never experienced before. But anyway, so that's my story there, and we can circle back to it. I like to say stack you back to it, Jen, stack you back to it, if you want. But
yeah, no, that's great. I'm really glad. I'm really happy for you that you found your people, and you found Christ in such a really cool way. And I relate to what you said about, like, your heart starts changing. Like, I've been in a situation recently in my life where I've needed to sacrifice something that I've been very unwilling to. And I'm not spilling details because it's a little personal, but basically I wasn't willing to put my sorry, getting a random Amber Alert. But yeah, so I wasn't basically I was in a situation where I was very stubborn and would constantly complain, and I slowly started to realize that, okay, maybe this is a cross that I'm unwilling to bear in this time of life, and I need a little bit of humble pie. And so I got my fork and I ate my humble pie, and doesn't taste very good, but I'm eating it.
It doesn't
So to
taste very
speak.
good. But sometimes it's like they're like, humble pie is like vegetables. You're better for having eaten them.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I gotta say, I was a little taken aback because the way we reconnected was, and I don't remember if I was already following you on Instagram, or if I was reading The Conservator and your name just came across, but I found you from your Conservator piece on the Daily Wire and Lady Ballers.
Yeah.
And my first thought was, is that Grace Bydalek? I've been saying it wrong for 10 years. Grace Bydalek. And second thought was, wait, is Grace conservative? Because I mean this in the nicest way possible, but like when we first met on Next to Normal, I had no idea that you were Christian or conservative. And maybe, like you said, you weren't necessarily a practicing Christian at that time. How long have you been conservative? How long would you say you identify as conservative?
My pronouns. I, when I say I grew up with thoughtful parents, I really mean that. Actually, could make me emotional. It won't. I won't let it. But it could make me emotional to talk about my parents. My saint of a father is a classical liberal, a deep thinker, incredibly well read, and raised his kids that way. I had the privilege of being able to like trap him in the car to, debate him about, whatever topic I was interested in at the time, whether it be, abortion or the Electoral College or some other, deeply held conservative perspective, and
Mm-hmm.
he would just very patiently sort of bear the brunt of all of my frustration and confusion, and explain things to me really humbly. And of course, when you're young like that, um, your parents are sort of the people that are really formative, in terms of your deeply held beliefs, but they haven't been tried, right? They haven't been tried by the outside world. And so when I went to college and went to school for musical theater, um, yeah, the ideas were really tried by fire. And I wouldn't say that I was radicalized on the University of Michigan campus, but I was certainly my my conservative views were certainly solidified in a way that I don't think they would have been. I think the leftism and the sort of insanity that I met, on the Michigan campus had the um, had the counterintuitive impact of pushing me further to the right. So yeah, I think I've been conservative for as long as I can remember. I'm not sure that um, I'm not sure that I would have been so outspoken about politics had I not been in a very left leaning sort of part of the world, little pocket of the world, a bubble, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
for college. And then had come to the city and seen the insanity here. And then COVID, of course, further radicalizes people, I think, further pushes people into their camps. Um,
Oh, I'll say, yeah.
yeah. And
Something
so,
kind of biblical about what happened to COVID, I think.
yeah, tell me more about that.
Uh, I just feel like, in a way, it maybe not like I said, maybe not radicalized, but it definitely opened people's eyes up to, oh, the government's not on my side.
Yeah.
Even to a certain extent, conservative politics are not on people's side.
Yeah.
One of my mentors once told me, I don't care how much they promise, I don't trust any politician. I don't care how good they seem, I don't trust any politician. That's why
Yeah.
Donald Trump won. And I was like, you've got a
100%.
point. And I think that um, piqued my curiosity as well, because I think we're living in a time where I don't think conservative politics or politics in general has ever been truly black and white as much as I think the liberals and the conservatives would like us to think. But I do think it's becoming more gray, in that
Mhm.
we really need to be careful for wolves in sheep's clothing within
Yeah.
the party.
Oh, yeah.
And getting back to COVID though, um, I just think a lot of people again realize the government's not on their side,
Yeah.
be it liberal or conservative, and there is a lot of there's a lot of profiteering off of people's misery.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit here and say one way or the other. How was COVID made? Was it made in a lab? Was it an accident? That's another debate for another time. But um, I do think
We
in
all know.
we all
We
know. Yes, yes. For clarity's sake, we all know.
Even Vanity Fair knows. We all know.
Yes, yes. Even Vanity Fair. That's right. That's right. Um, yeah. If you just look at like I don't think you would get the party you have today, like with RFK and Nicole Shanahan and Elon Musk, Tulsi
Yeah.
Gabbard, like high profile Democrats
Yeah.
who clearly had enough brains to realize, oh, this isn't normal, this isn't right, what's happening. Um, and I think it's really cool to see it. It's definitely changed my perspective um, on politics a little bit, because I think it's so easy to demonize opposition.
Yeah.
And when you can understand that you don't have to agree on everything, but the
Yeah.
things you can agree on can be just as, if not more powerful than what you
Yeah.
disagree with. Like people trying to make comparisons like, oh, RFK Jr. is the head of Health and Human Services, but he stands for he said he was up for abortions and all that. It's like, he's not in charge of abortions.
Yeah.
He's in charge of our health and our food. That's not why
Yeah.
he was hired. And I'm sure he doesn't have a problem with that either. Like
Yeah.
I'm glad he's in the position he's in. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily need a full blanket slate of Republicans running the country, as long as, I mean, I want the right person for the job. I don't have to agree with them on everything, but I mean, at least it seems like most of them, at the very least, believe in God and believe that this country is not as good as it could be, and they want to
Mhm.
help make America great again. So, yeah, I think COVID was, I think I heard it said once before, it's the great disruptor. And yeah, I think the more time we get away from COVID, the more that becomes true. And also, just, and not to go on a tangent about health, but like, just realizing how poorly educated we've been about health.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Oh, women in particular, frankly, like
oh, you guys
about
have it
their
worse than anybody.
hormones and their like basic biological functions, and like it is really, I mean, it's another thing I've been thinking about since getting engaged. It's a really and frankly, since seeing like 3 or 4 couples who are very, very close to me in age and in proximity, like, I just love these people, going through fertility struggles at 27, 28, 29. You're like,
Yeah,
"This is so prevalent. What is going on? There's
it,
something
it
going on
shouldn't be
here.
happening.
It shouldn't
Like,
be happening."
there is a logical explanation. I mean, if we had I mean, we will, and we are, but if we had the proper education to pinpoint
Yeah.
these things would go away.
And women are finally taking control, I think. We've seen a movement of it, not only in MAHA, but beyond, like
Hmm.
in through the Democratic Party, when we have Jolene Brighton and Sarah Hill and these women's health experts teaching us more about how to regulate our cycles, how to understand our bodies, how to preserve our fertility, how to ensure that we are caring for ourselves properly so that when we want to get pregnant, we can, and like, and how to exercise well for women, how to cycle sync,
Right.
all of these. And I know that I'm on a dude's podcast right now, but it's just so important. And I think I think it's a real movement. Also, how to eat well,
Mhm.
how to eliminate toxins from our environments.
Right.
I've started this sort of animal-based diet, not entirely, just animal-based ish. I still eat vegetables and stuff, but
Yeah,
for fertility, and it has made a massive difference in the way that I feel on a day-to-day basis, and
that's great.
eliminating different toxins from my home slowly. Um, but it's just crazy. Yeah, it's crazy how little knowledge we had beforehand.
Yeah. Well, it radicalized my wife. I mean,
Mm,
she learned about all this stuff. I mean, if it wasn't for her, I'd probably be, I'd probably have some health concerns, honestly. But
yeah,
she educated us. She did the research, and there is something about being married that like makes the health discussion a lot easier, because I
yeah,
mean, it's like her passion now,
yeah.
and she does all the work. I mean, I do a lot of homework myself, but and we kind of give each other, we do our own research, then we compare notes and stuff like that. But she does
It's
the
fun.
vast majority of like shopping for groceries, planning our meals. She's eliminated like 90% of seed oils from our diets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I used to be a horrible snacker. Like I bet you if I had kept on the way I was going, I'd be close to 200 pounds right now. And praise God, I'm not. It's in part because of her. And yeah, seeing her take over that, it's a relief to me, because I don't have to like go into an anxiety spiral figuring out like, how am I going to do
Yeah.
this? Like, she knows exactly what she needs to do, and I told her, like, I'm putting this in your hands. I trust you. Keep our family healthy, and especially, now that we have a son, we have another one on the way. Like, it's especially important, because um, when you're feeding kids and you hear about like, like a lot of
Yeah.
these problems with like fertility, as like Nicole Shanahan discussed on Relatable recently,
Yeah.
autism, stuff like that. It starts in cancer. It starts with food. Like, I'm sorry, like
Yep.
we found the cure for cancer, and it's not eating crap.
Yeah, it's diet based. I was
Newsflash,
gonna
breaking
say,
news.
it's good to hear you've cut the snacking. I bet your wife has that, like, has you on a high protein diet then, because you're just full, like, you're just satiated. You eat
Yeah.
well and you're satiated. It's amazing. It's
Well,
amazing
also,
how that.
we Catholics, we're in Lent right now, and so we take on. I'm taking on an extra amount of fasting, so that's in part the reason why.
Religious convictions are the
Yes,
reason you're
no,
not
it's true.
snacking.
It's true. Fasting is like it's great for the body and for the spirit.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
On what
Yeah.
you said about this is a dude's podcast. I've actually had quite a few female guests. We've gotten into these topics before, so it's not foreign territory for me, and it's not something I it's not something I have a problem with discussing. I feel like once you get married, all those discussions about like women's health and fertility and just like all those terms, it just like it doesn't face like I'll talk to like women at work and they'll openly talk about these things in front of me and they'll be like, "Oh, sorry, Vince, like you're not weirded out, are you?" I'm like, "Guys, I'm married. I've heard it all."
How long have you been married for? When did you get married?
I got married in 2022, July 2022. We'll be married for 3 years coming this July.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think you said earlier something about being married sort of helps you on your faith journey, or at least it helped you specifically. And I agree with that 100%. I was very lost before I met my wife. I think I was very close with God, but I think the way I say it, I was addicted to the simple pleasures of life, the
Mm,
materialistic pleasures of life. I lived a very materialistic, comfy lifestyle, and I would make sacrifices to keep that lifestyle, if that makes sense.
mm.
And meeting her was the thing that really snapped me out of that. And like, oh, I actually want to man up. I actually want to show up for somebody every day because
Yeah.
this person loves me and cares about me so much. And uh, I don't think I've actually talked about this in public, but it's better late than never. I feel like that was also the moment that God really like forced me to like make a very drastic move to get closer to where he wants me to be. Not that I am
Yeah.
right now, but closer. Because when I proposed to her, I had no plan about where we were going to live. If we were going to go live, I was living with my parents in Iowa at the time, and we had no plan of where if we were going to live in Iowa or I was going to move to Texas. If like what I was going to do for work because I had a horrible job. I hated my
Yeah.
job. At least I did at that point in my life. And then all of a sudden I like had to learn like, oh, wait, I need insurance. I need like all these different things. And it reached the point where I had a panic attack in church,
Mm,
and I thought I was having a heart attack because I had been having like the stress had been building up for so long that I had been getting like chest pains, and I was like, what is this? I've never experienced this before. And it
yeah.
was, I do think it was in part, it was a spiritual attack in some ways. I didn't really think about that until recently, but um, that was a major wake up call for me in realizing like, maybe I'm not doing this right. Like
Yeah.
maybe I need to change things up, shake things up radically, which is why I chose to uh, move to Texas and had to struggle for quite a bit to get my feet on the ground.
Yeah.
And praise God, I did eventually. And it was not easy because I feel like the anxiety kind of followed me for a couple years. I can safely say like maybe as of I think as of like last year that's when it started to fully subside and go away to where
Mm,
I feel like I have control over my life in that I've given that control back to God. So,
yeah.
and it was all because I fell in love with a girl.
Look, making great change requires a great catalyst, in
Hmm.
my experience. That was something my dad and I were talking about when I met my fiance, and I immediately recognized that as soon as we started dating, because we knew each other for 9 or 10 months before we started dating. I was actually his TA in a theological fellowship called the Gotham Fellowship, which
Mm.
happens to be Redeemer, and it's a fellowship that is focused on the confluence between your faith and your work, and understanding the foundations of your work as being your theological convictions, as being your faith in God, um, and bringing that connection alive for you, so that
Mhm.
you can approach work on a day-to-day basis in a different way, and really like bring about a sort of cultural renewal, specifically in New York City. And I did the program in 2020 to 2021. And then 2023 to 2024, I was asked to come in TA. And I met Ben. And immediately we were theologically and ideologically aligned, which is crazy. Like, having lived in New York City at that point for 6 years, this is my seventh year in New York. That
Wow.
is that is a that is a rarity. I I cannot emphasize how rare that is to
Yeah.
experience a meeting of the minds in a place like this, um, in every way. And I observed him closely over the sort of 9 to 10 months of the fellowship, and then we started dating, um, immediately after the fellowship, and we were engaged, like, just shy of 6 months later.
Wow.
And yeah, so we really knew. We just knew.
Hey, when you know,
Um,
you know.
when you know, you know, you know? But yeah, I recognized pretty early on, obviously, what it was going to be, what this relationship was going to be.
Mm.
And I remember calling my dad and being like, "I feel like I need to do a life audit. Like, just look at my whole, like, my financial health and my spiritual health and my physical health, my nutrition patterns. Like, I feel like I'm being called up and into something that is greater than me."
Mm.
And he was like, "Yeah, this is great. Change happens when you have a great catalyst, and meeting your person is the best catalyst that there is, in my opinion."
Yeah.
Um, and again, witnessing God's faithfulness, I think, in those moments too, is, I mean, the greatest catalyst is witnessing God's faithfulness. The second greatest catalyst is meeting your person.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Meeting your
It's it's
person,
it's a
witnessing God's
combo meal.
faithfulness through through meeting your person. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They're absolutely, yeah, interlinked, at least for the both of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me more about your fiance.
Ben, he's
Yeah.
awesome. He's a Christian. He grew up um, a leftist atheist, which is crazy to think. And then he had
Wow.
a both spiritual and a political conversion, um, 5 or 6 years ago now. Um, he is a lawyer, but I think he would be mad if I called him that in public. He really is the best writer I've ever met. Um, he's deeply thoughtful. He's gentle. He is, um, you know, in C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man, where he talks about men with well-developed chests, like men with deep and abiding emotional intelligence, men who recognize what time it is, men with a robust connection between their head and their heart. I would say that Ben embodies that, um, in a way that my father does, but in a way that, is yeah, is greater than anybody that I have ever met in this context. So this is, yeah, he's just wonderful. He's wonderful.
Mhm.
I could go on for days, and we don't have time. But
You have a
but
whole
he's the
podcast episode just on Ben.
you know, I'd be down.
Nice. That's cool. That's cool. I'm glad you found your person.
Tell me about your wife. How did you know?
Wha it's a really funny story. So we went to the same college,
Mm,
and I was going I had gone back to school for a year to get an MBA in film producing.
mhm,
And when in our particular dorm, you're not allowed to you're not allowed to have like the opposite sex in your dorm, and you're not allowed to shoot in your dorm without permission unless it's a MBA student, and I was an MBA student, so people were like, "Hey, can we shoot in your apartment for 3 or 4 hours?" And I'm like, "Sure, whatever." And this super cute girl walks in. She only has like a small role in the movie. She's an actress, by the way, or she was studying to be an actress. And I was like, wow, she's probably too popular for me to date, but whatever. So that's where it started. And then a year later, my mom convinced me to get on Catholic Match because I was stubborn. I had already gone through like 3 or 4 long distance breakups. I was like, long distance is not for me. I'm done with long distance. If I'm going to date someone, it's going to be right here in the States. And I was on Catholic Match to help with that. And then Kate popped up, and I recognized her from school. Like this is probably not going to work out, but I'll message her. We're JP Catholic alums. We'll at least bond over that. Maybe we'll be friends. Who knows? And we talked for weeks, and we had so much in common. We were both into movies and the arts. We were both big Disney nerds. We were both very into our faith, and just like everything matched up. And this kind of goes back to my inability to sacrifice my comfort. She wanted to date, and I was like, I don't trust myself to do another long distance relationship. I explained to her that, and I don't feel like I want to do that. And a couple months went by, and I couldn't stop thinking about her.
What an idiot.
Yeah, I went on dates and stuff, and like I was like, no, I miss Kate. And this is hilarious, but the sign for me that I had made the right decision to re-pursue her was I texted her, and guess what movie she was about to go see with her family?
What?
Toy Story 4.
Cool.
Which I am a big Pixar fan, big Toy Story fan. So that was like, I feel like that was God's way of saying, okay, go. You have your sign, go. You let her get away once, don't let it happen again.
Don't be an idiot, Vince.
Yes, don't be an idiot, Vince. That's right.
You're sitting. It's the parable where you're sitting on top of the roof, and there's a hurricane and everything is flooding, and like somebody, you're praying, God, please send me a life raft, and like somebody rows, God, come save me, and somebody rows past in a life raft and is like, can I save you? And you're like, no, God's gonna do it.
Right,
like,
right.
It's like you're just that's good.
That was my last lifeboat. After that, I probably would have been done for.
Fair.
But yeah, no. Then we I told her, like, I know you have no reason to take me back. Not that we were together, but like I know you have no reason to say yes because I said no. But if you really want to, I'm willing to give it a try. And we did, and it was the best decision I've ever made.
Yeah. And 2 babies later.
And yeah, one baby,
guys.
another on the way.
Well,
yeah.
Can I ask about your Catholic convictions? Why Catholicism, not Protestantism?
Wow, that's a good. I've never been asked that before. I mean, I've always been raised Catholic, and I never really questioned it, but it also just made sense to me, I guess. I think even when I did bring up my doubts, it just seemed to make sense. I guess in particular, like the how do I say this? I've never been asked this before. It's really put me on the spot.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's totally fine. I guess just like the richness of the church. Like there's so much to a Catholic mass, there's like so many steps and there's so many prayers and so many, like, when you go into research everything that is said during a mass, during the consecration of the Eucharist, um, it's just like, this can't not be
Yeah.
truth. Like, it's just
It's
so,
a liturgy for you then.
yeah, it's just, it's beautiful, it's profound.
Yeah.
It's never failed me. Um, like, I am an adamant defender of
Mm,
uh praying the rosary.
mm,
I try to make an effort to pray the rosary every day, and I don't always do a good job. Sometimes I am distracted while I'm praying. Sometimes I don't pray at all, or sometimes I'll say one half in the morning, one half in the evening. Like,
mm,
it's never always, it's not always perfect. But I feel like just that little habit is what has also seen me through some pretty dark times
mm.
and has helped me to stay on the straight and narrow. And when the world tries to I don't know, distract or pull you away from that, um,
Mm.
there's just something about the rosary that it just roots you back into the heart of the church, which is Christ.
Tim Keller, I'm a big Tim Keller fan. He was my professor in seminary actually, and he said once, the liturgy is the thing that you cling to when the fire of your faith goes out. And
Mm,
it's the thing that brings you back into sort of, I don't know, spiritual rainforest again when you've been walking through a desert. You know,
yeah,
it's the constant. Um, and so I totally understand why that would be um just profoundly meaningful to you.
yeah. I mean, just it never changes. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can say this about most Christian faiths, but like in particular for me, the Catholic Church, um, as the world changes, as people come and go, as politicians and just trends come and go, the church is always the same. And I think
Yeah.
it is that sameness that there is like security in. I mean, not even just from a Catholic perspective, I think from a Christian perspective, like anybody can relate to, like,
Totally.
Jesus is I think it's Ali Stuckey that says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, uh, tomorrow, and forever, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for asking. I've never been, at least not in a while. I haven't been asked that.
Yeah, of course. I just wanna make sure we're good. Your video is frozen. Oh,
Oh yeah, no, it's not.
there you go. You came back. Okay, great.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, yeah, I feel the same way, and I feel like it was yeah, like we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, um, it is the constant that gives you the courage necessary to make the, um necessary to make the noble decisions. Um,
Mhm.
I understand what you mean.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to something else. I feel like we got onto uh, quite the rabbit hole there. That was fun. I want to talk about the Dissident Project,
Sure.
um, because we talked earlier before we were when we were figuring out what topics to discuss and just catching up. You talked about your journey from graduating college, getting management or an agent, and then from there you're ready to start your acting career,
Yeah.
and then you want to educate kids on authoritarianism.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of winding road. So, I came to the city, I was a musical theater major at Michigan, um, which is sort of and this is, again, not to be braggadocious at all, but it is one of the top programs. If you graduate, you're expected to do really well in the industry. The Michigan Showcase is a big deal. Was able to get an agent coming out of the Michigan Showcase, which was great. Started immediately, um, auditioning, um, and was met with some success, especially up and through COVID. I always knew even before Michigan, that musical theater was not the only thing that I wanted to do. And I knew that I wanted to incorporate politics and writing somehow into my professional trajectory moving forward. Um, and so, given what I had experienced at Michigan, I knew that I wanted to start writing about the performance industry at some point. 2020 rolled around, and I remember reading Barry Weiss's resignation letter and thinking to myself, okay, like she's laying it on the line. There are people all around me laying it on the line. Like, let's get to it. So I came to the city. I came back to the city. I was home for COVID for about 5 months. Came back to the city, found
By the
a
city, you mean?
New York City. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, and found a journalism fellowship, that it was called Young Voices, actually. It helps, which is actually, it's the 501(c)(3 that Dissident Project is under. And so it helps young people to really break into the mainstream media, with their articles and their commentary. And I started writing for them. My second article was about the Michael Jackson musical on Broadway and about the lack of free and open discourse around that musical in particular. Um, it brought in how many performers had been canceled for much less. Many shows had been canceled for much less. And then brought up the allegations, of course, against the King of Pop, and sort of discussed the hypocrisy there. And it upset a lot of people.
I can imagine.
And from there it was just I continued to write specifically about arts and culture and theater and politics, and then obviously about my own personal experiences. And from there was connected through that fellowship, was connected with a mentor whose name was Daniel DiMartino. And Daniel is phenomenal. He is a dissident in his own right. He's from Venezuela. He came over to the States to pursue an education. And he's now a fellow at the Manhattan Institute. He's pursuing his PhD in economics at Columbia. And he works specifically in the economics of immigration over at MI. So he's doing really fascinating work. But he was asked to come speak at a high school in Boston. And he realized only after having spoken at the school that the teacher was having to pay for his honoraria, for his travel, for any extra expenses that he might have incurred. And he thought that was an injustice. And so he started the Dissident Project. And we have built it from the ground up, from 5 dissidents all the way up to 17 dissidents. We've got 17 dissidents on our roster. We've been in over 150 schools and institutions, and we've spoken in front of 15,000 students in person. And the goal of these speeches is not only to expose high school kids to the realities of authoritarianism around the world, and sort of put a young face to these realities and say, hey, this is a current issue, and we need to be careful about it in the States as well. And we need to be knowledgeable and educated about the things that are happening around the world, but also to shake sort of the sense of apathy that we've seen in the younger generation, and hopefully to catalyze civic engagement, and to catalyze a sense of gratefulness for people's American liberties and freedoms. So that's what the Dissident Project does, and I'm always very humbled by the people that I get to work alongside.
Yeah, no, it's a great, sounds like a great cause to be a part of. So what specifically about educating people on, like, what was it about authoritarianism specifically that drew you to this cause?
Well, we just talked about COVID. Obviously, I don't use the term persecution very lightly. I don't use the term authoritarianism lightly. But I think I think we saw a sort of authoritarian power creep in 2020 and 2021. And many young students specifically just have no awareness of what's going on in the world in terms of authoritarian governments, and no idea that this is, or no understanding that this is a current issue. But also specifically from, I would say, 2018 to 2022, we saw the creeping hand of the government sort of enter authoritarian territory. So that was really the impetus for my involvement. Also loved Daniel and loved the organization from the start. Just thought the work that they were doing was really, really important. Yeah, that was what brought me to the Dissident Project. And then actually what has been really touching and wonderful and has actually kept me there has been the opportunity to work with Christians, persecuted Christians from all around the globe. We have young people from the People's Republic of China who
Oh yeah,
who
wow.
were involved with house churches and whose mothers were given forced abortions. Christian mothers were given forced abortions, in service of the one-child policy. We have, a wonderful North Korean dissident who came to Christ after being just inundated with what she called the quote unquote gospel of the dear leader. We have Venezuelans who have been persecuted for their faith. We have Russians who have been persecuted for their faith. And so it has been sincerely humbling for me as a Western Christian to come to a deeper understanding of the plight of the church worldwide.
Yeah. No, I can imagine how humbling that could be. I mean, because there are people in other countries who, like, their lives are taken because they profess to be Christian. I mean, like, we got it easy. We got a slap on the wrist. And we have to argue our faith with atheists. That's easy. It's much harder when you actually, as you say, you have to face an authoritarian government head on, and the small and large forms it takes, and risk your life. We have it very easy here, and there are other countries that profess to be Christian and believe in God that have it much, much worse.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think it's why the Western church can be at times so like milquetoast, and weak, frankly. I think Christianity, I mean, the early Christian church thrived under persecution. Christianity thrives under persecution.
It's true. Yeah.
And so comfort is the enemy of the gospel believing heart, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. There is definitely some truth in that. And you definitely, I don't think there is such a thing as a relationship with Jesus Christ without a profound understanding of sacrifice and discomfort. Because I mean, like, the greatest act of love is sacrifice. I mean, as we saw from Jesus, like, that is the greatest act of love, and you see it throughout the Bible. No greater love is it than one who lays down his life for his friends. I believe that's the verse. And yeah, lost my train of thought there, but
you're good. You made a very good
you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. Okay, let's pivot to. Or first off, how are you doing on time?
I should go in the next 3-ish minutes.
3. Okay, well then we'll wrap up then. I was gonna say we could go longer, but if you gotta go,
let's do a part 2. This is great.
Oh my gosh, I'd love to do part 2.
Let's do part 2.
Okay, all right. We'll figure something off air. Yeah, because I really want to talk to you about the culture. We didn't really get to talk about
Yeah.
pop culture and all that last time, but we'll wrap up with the meaty stuff. Okay,
Great.
so
Yeah, part 2 sounds great. I would love to
okay,
do that.
cool. Really quick, if you can tell this in 3 minutes, tell me. You talked to me about how you had to say goodbye to acting and how that was a really difficult. Um, it was a really difficult choice you had to make. So talk about that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's difficult to put into 2 minutes, but it was it became abundantly clear that what I was doing and what I had come to New York to do, so this whole writing and politics thing, being in the liberty movement, and um, my acting aspirations were not compatible. Um, and I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the in so many ways, acting started to sort of slip out of my fingers, and I was heartbroken. I felt it was like a sort of a sudden change in calling, and my heart didn't have time. My heart just it didn't have time to adapt to that change, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, and essentially, that entire community was lost overnight, specifically in sort of the 2019, 2020, 2020 era, um, when I was um, pretty openly talking and writing about these things, about politics rather. And so yeah, I think God um, used musical theater and used the arts, and which I still love and believe in deeply. I think they're incredibly powerful. I think culture is incredibly powerful. I think art is incredibly powerful. I have all the faith in the world that art um, can be deeply transformative for people's lives, and can change people's
Amen.
heart. And
Mhm.
that's why it's important. Like that's why it's important in the first place. Um, but God used that to bring me here and put me providentially in a spot um, to be doing what I'm doing now. Um, in another way, and just like we talked about earlier, God's plans were so much greater for me than those that I could imagine for myself. But because I'm obstinate and stubborn, he had to pry this other thing from my hand. And I made it really painful for myself. You know what I mean? Like, I
Sometimes
think
something like that would be,
he had to,
no matter how you
he had
cut it.
to, yeah, I think it was John Tyson or something who said, God, God is going to give you, he's going to willingly give you the right thing, but he might have to break a few fingers to take the wrong thing out of your hand. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I feel like he broke some fingers because of me.
Mhm.
Because I was stubborn. Um, but again, God is faithful and great, and has been proven to be good over and over again in my life. So
Amen. Do you feel
yeah.
like that door is truly closed for you?
You know, we talked about this a bit on the phone. I feel like part of the giving it up is also, you know, giving up your giving giving up any sort of like delusions of grandeur that your plans really mean anything at all, right? Like you of course can plan and plod your way along toward a vision, um but when God wants to do what he wants to do, he's going to do it. So if God wants to bring that back into my life and um give it back to me, then I am willing and able to take it back, and I I'll be ready if that is the case at some point. If not, life is beautiful and full and edifying, and I'm grateful for just exactly where I am.
think that's a good attitude to have.
Thank you.
Well, Grace, this was not how I expected this episode to go. I really don't think we talked about art much at all.
I don't think we did.
But as I
We'll get
told you, yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. But as I told you, this show has morphed from a college kid who liked talking about movies to talking about movies, but in addition to more important discussions about faith, culture, pop culture, politics, and all those things. So it's not how I thought it would go, but I am incredibly happy it went the way it did.
Me too, Vince.
And I am honored that you took the time to come on. I'm glad that we were able to reconnect all these years, and I'm glad to know that you're game to come back.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'm here.
All right. Well, thank you again, Grace. If people want to follow your work, where can they find you?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at Grace_Daily, DALEY. And my website is gracedalybydalek.com. It will soon be gracedailysalvatore.com, SALVATORE.com. So that's where I'll be.
Strong Italian name. I like that.
I know.
All right. Yeah. Well, you guys know where to find me. It's all in the description. I don't need to tell you because I don't. Thank you all for watching. Please follow Grace and tune in next time for whenever Grace returns, hopefully soon. Have a great day, everybody. God bless, and peace out.